there is one beautiful possibility in German. Let's take a look at what I call the standard order. You could have a standard sentence. You don't have to scream, schreien, to scream, and then you put the dependent clause after. That's a standard order. That's how I would suggest you write until the end of B1. Unless you feel very familiar, very comfortable, then you can play around with this in the manner that I will present to you in a second. Now we have something that's what I call the reversed order. You could start with a while sentence, but then something happens. So this is the dependent clause. But if you start with a dependent clause, and with most dependent clauses you can do that, not with every kind of dependent clause, you see something change. Weil ich dich laut und deutlich hören kann, musst du nicht so schreien. Because I can hear you loud and clearly, you don't have to scream so loudly. Now, that's the main clause. Let me tell you, the must, the blue must, is in both orders, standard and reversed order, on position 2. And that is because the dependent clause, while clause, push-out clause, takes position 1. Let that sink in. That whole sentence takes a position, one position only. So many words, just one position. And the must is properly in position 2 as it's supposed to be. Here we are. So now you can relax. The bunny comes. Let's look at something just for fun. And I only go into the 3 verbs situation. The 4 verbs was just too nonsensical. It's beautiful for grammar geeks, but let me spare you that. So, du hörst mich laut und deutlich. I developed this. So, of course, there's only one verb here, hörst. Let's add another verb, for example, werde. Ich werde laut und deutlich. This is the passive. I am being heard loud and clearly. And you see what happens. The mich turned into an ich and the du went away. That's what the passive does. It's a completely different topic, but it's just one possibility. I could have also taken the past tense, but I like this one. Now, let's add another verb. So I want you to notice that whenever you add a verb, you add it on position 2. And there was a verb before, so the new verb pushes the old verb to the end. Werde pushed hören to the end, and it changed its form as well. Now bin pushes werde to the end. Gehört stays where it is. No further movement here. It's not juggling. It's really just one at a time. German is very structured, very beautiful. Ich bin laut und deutlich gehört worden. I have been heard loud and clearly. So the bin pushes the werden to the end, and it needs to turn into worden because it is the past of the passive. So that's 3 verbs in main clauses. Let's take a look at a dependent clause, at a while clause. Now you see there is no verb yet. Any guesses how I would distribute the gehört, the worden, and the bin? The verbs don't change. You just have to arrange them. Can you try this? Let's see how much you already got from this little presentation. You don't even have to understand what you're saying here. It's very mechanical. Even if this was all gibberish, you would be able to put them in the right order. Gehört, worden, bin. See, you can build proper German sentences without understanding a single word, although you've heard the meaning of this already. Now, there's one beautiful, let's call it mindfuck. One little information. There's one infinitive in gehört, worden, bin. Oh, that's actually not even true. Worden is not really an infinitive. Please ignore that. But let's assume. There is examples where there can be one infinitive. Let's take a look at one more example, then the fun part is over. Ich höre dich laut und deutlich. Now kann pushes the hören, and kann requires an infinitive. Now let's add another verb, so we get our 3 verbs. Habe. So, ich habe dich laut und deutlich. Hören stays where it is. And now habe pushed the kann to the end and it needs to change. The past of kann is ironically an infinitive. Yeah, modal verbs are a bit special. Don't worry about this. It's really something that will be presented to you at the right time by your German course or your German teacher. Now, the fun begins. Dependent clauses. Because I try this one. And I tell you, it's a trick question. So if it's a trick question, where can the habe only go? Yeah, I make it easy for you. Hören, haben, können. Yeah, that's the other possibility, but hören and können, I love to stay together. So what's left? You see the gap? Isn't it beautiful? Weil ich dich laut und deutlich habe hören können. Because I have been able to hear you loud and clearly. Gorgeous. So the problem here is, or the reason why the habe doesn't follow the beautiful rule I just showed you, is because we have two infinitives here. This is stuff for B2 and onwards. It's just for entertainment here. Yeah, lean back and be happy that if you are not too far into B2 yet, you can just lean back and ignore all this. But if you come across, you might remember there was something weird. Quickly, the order of objects. Objects is a very, I use it very broadly here. It's not as precise as I would like it to be, but let's stick to it. So next to verbs, you have objects. Sometimes they come with a preposition, and some people call them prepositional objects, sometimes without. Yeah, the real objects are always without prepositions, but for this purpose here, let's take a look. So you see here 4 Latin words: temporal, causal, modal, local. What they mean will become clear in the next 5 minutes. The first sentence, so we've covered the verb positions. Ich habe gegeben, I have given. Verbs are clear, yeah, or will be clear as soon as you come to that lesson in your course. Now, if you say I have given, the first thing I would think is, what? What have you given? And that thing that has been given is always in the accusative. Let's say ein Teeservice. A service is a kind of set of tea pots and plates and cups. Yeah, so a service. I'm not sure what you call this. A set, maybe in English. So that's the first thing I would think about. I have given a tea service. Service. Sorry, it's not a service. It's a service, French, I think. And then I would maybe ask, okay, but to whom have you given this? Because if you give something, you usually give it to someone. And in German, to whom would be wem. And as many English speakers do not speak as precisely, they sometimes say to who. Yeah? Or who have you given this to? But it's really whom. The problem is whom is not only reserved for the dative in English, it might also address a German accusative. So the translation doesn't help you much. Let's say meiner Mutter. And you can see maybe if you have some experience with dative, meiner Mutter, even though it's feminine, die Mutter, it ends in er, der Mutter, it's dative. So I talk about this a little bit more. This is the simple version. You have a what do you give and a whom. And in this case, where you can have two objects, that's only with certain verbs like giving, gifting, sending, bringing. There's always something you can bring to someone. It's not with every verb. When that is the case, usually the person receiving the thing is in the dative, while the thing you give is accusative. Keep that in mind. Now, why all the fancy Latin words, you might wonder. Here is your answer. So we can, of course, put a lot of information into every sentence, many sentences. And one could be information about time. Yesterday, when. A reason, because of her birthday. Wegen ihres Geburtstags. It's a genitive, don't worry about it. Mit Liebe, how? Yeah, with love. Actually, the color is Wrong, it should be orange, my apologies. Auf der Arbeit, information about the place, where or where to sometimes, if you move somewhere. So this is a horrible monster sentence which is only here to show you the order or the suggested order of things. Don't expect any grammar rule to be followed meticulously by Germans. These are just rules of thumb. These are here to make your life easier. So you only have to remember that the order of anything in a sentence is, well, dative, object, then temporal, causal, modal, local, and then accusative. Very simple, no stress, right? Okay, let's make this easier. The order of objects. Again, to remember the order of these things, there's only one word you have to remember, and that's the word tea camel. If you don't know what a tea camel is, it is a German breed of camels which 2000 years ago, when the German language was created, was still alive. It's extinct nowadays. This is the memory, in memory of the tea camel. We have this session today. And the tea camel looks more or less like this, the last existing picture. Here it is. Remember the tea camel, commemorate it. It was a great contributor to the German language. So T, as you can see, reminds you of temporal, K, causal, me, modal, L, local. Temporal, temp, if you speak French, le temps, but temporal means time. Causal, what caused this is the why. The modal, how. The local, where. Very simple. So enjoy the tea camel. Now, let me make your life a lot easier, because the tea camel actually very rarely shows up in its entirety. For example. Yeah. So the main thing you will have to deal with are two things. First, sometimes you have verbs that allow two objects. It's not always the case. And by objects, I mostly mean things like this. There is no preposition here. Yeah. If there's a preposition, things change. Prepositions are nasty little bugs. They dominate a certain area of the sentence. That's a topic for another masterclass one day. For now, keep this in mind. If you have this order of objects, you always have the dative first and then the accusative. And the way to remember this, the picture already gives a little bit away, is to remember German is pretty dada. German is dada, that means dative before accusative. There is exceptions, which I do not talk about here. I talk about that in my course, but for a rough overview, if you have two objects, it's the dative that comes first. And there is one exception which you will figure out yourself. Yeah, I have to leave a little bit of the discovery to you. Now, if you take a look at our monster sentence from before, we don't really need wegen ihres Geburtstags. We rarely use mit Liebe. So we are left with the usual Dada, meiner Mutter ein Teeservice, and we have information about time and about place. Gestern auf der Arbeit. And it's always in this order. Again, every rule can be broken, but you, as a learner, until the end of B2, keep in mind that you put time before place. It's one of the most common mistakes. This rule helps you avoid most of your mistakes. And place could be a place where you already are at, or it could be a place that you're heading towards. Yeah, so I could say, ich bin gestern zur Arbeit gefahren, so I'm driving to work. It means I'm heading towards work. This is the most important rule. Dada, if you want to put meiner Mutter ein Teeservice in the proper order, and time before place, yesterday at work. And that's different in other languages. Keep that in mind. Temporal, local, just a different way. That was it. For those who are not working with my course yet, you can try the first free lesson, which is vast and will provide you with a lot of information, not about this in particular, because this is an advanced topic, but it will show you how to deal with articles and also how to actually properly organize your learning and what really matters when you learn German. This is stuff almost nobody ever tells you, not on YouTube nor anywhere else in classes. I've worked with many people So it's a unique chance for you to really get an insight into highly efficient German learning, and also German learning that is actually highly enjoyable. Because while it is a lot of work, hard work can be very rewarding if done right and if you actually see the fruits of your work. And this is what Smarter German is all about. So take your camera, copy this, or Google Smarter German. Ideally, you just enter smartergerman.com into your browser and then you click around. Yeah. If you need any support, let me know, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Können wir jetzt gehen? Now you have to stay with me for the rest of the day, Lavia. Okay. Have a lovely evening, and hope you enjoy your German learning no matter what. Yeah. And one last reminder, don't take things so seriously. Things are, in the end, not as complicated as they might seem in the beginning. It's just that you have very little insight into the whole at the beginning. Yeah? Dada. Paka paka.